Okay, so I do not have a slideshow. I'm just going to sort of share my experience as I've been in the healthcare system now for about 12 years, so quite some time. And I got involved in medical assisting while I was in high school, and actually got hired straight out of high school, finishing my MA program, and then got hired at the UW Medical Center, and I've been there since then. So, just a quick introduction. My name is Priscilla, and my pronouns are she, her. And as I said, I work at the UW Medical Center. I worked multiple jobs. So I worked as a medical assistant, and then I also work now as a coordinator within our living kidney donor program. So I work with people who want to donate their kidney, whether that's to a loved one, to someone they don't know, to a kiddo. We partner with Seattle Children's Hospital. So healthcare is quite a rewarding field to be in, and also really difficult. So I'm just going to give sort of a backstory as to how I got here, because I really feel like I had the least typical pathway to where I ended up now, a pretty windy road and just very different than what most people experience. So, um, I was born and raised in Seattle. I'm a family of six. So both of my parents are immigrants. They came from different countries. So there's already a little bit of complexity there. In being a mixed race person in Seattle, I grew up fairly poor. We did not have a lot of money, so I felt that the cards were pretty much stacked against me from the very beginning, from being poor, children of immigrants. My parents had multiple health issues. And so college and a career to me felt so far off, when really majority of my childhood up through high school was truly just trying to survive. Um, to even get to anywhere. So college, I'm like, we'll see. We'll see you when we see you. So, I did pretty well in high school up until I want to say about middle school. At that point, the weight of my life started to really take hold, um, from being a caretaker. And I think a lot now about caretaker responsibilities in terms of kiddos, because I don't think there was a name for what I was feeling growing up. Um, but I was doing a lot of caretaker responsibilities as a child, whether it was being on the phone with billing, making appointments for my parents, translating. Those are all things that we don't really talk about, and how that really can affect kids, particularly kids of immigrants. So that's something I've been thinking about a lot more lately. Not that I have any solutions to that, other than perhaps maybe there's more language that we have now to name what those feelings are. And for those of you that may have done the same for your parents, I see you, and you are not alone in that. Um, so growing up, again, college never really a topic of conversation. I realized maybe by eighth grade that there was no way we would ever have enough money to send me or any of my three other siblings to college. um, it didn't seem possible for me, and so I think at that point is when my burnout really started to kick in. And I really sort of spiraled into really deep depression, probably starting in about seventh, eighth grade. The combination of not having parents who could help me in terms of schoolwork, in terms of planning for college. My parents were just never equipped for that. They had high school, maybe some high school education. And so it really was kind of left to ourselves to fend for ourselves and get things done. So I did not grow up with good habits in terms of learning, in terms of planning. I just didn't have that. So my high school years started off to a pretty rough start. Um, of course, being the eighth grader that I am, I filled out my own paperwork for high school because my parents didn't know how to do that. I filled out my own paperwork. And in typical, 12-year-old me fashion, I turned in my paperwork a day late, which doesn't really seem like a big deal now. However, at that time for Seattle Public Schools, when you were filling out your paperwork for high school, you would rank your preferred high schools from 1 to 10. I grew up in Ballard at that time, lived in walking distance from Ballard High School, super close. And because I turned my paperwork in late, I ended up getting assigned to Cleveland High School in Beacon Hill, which is very far away from where I was living in Ballard. And to add insult to injury, neither of my parents drove. Not that I think we even had money to keep a car going, but mom never drove after she came here from the Philippines. My dad drove until maybe I was 4 or 5, and then epilepsy and seizure took his license away. So it was the Metro bus for me. I think I woke up around 5 in the morning to take the 3 buses to get to Cleveland High. Eventually, I was transferred out to Roosevelt, where my brother um, was currently going to. So I had to start high school over twice with no friends, knew nobody. Was really hard for me. Throughout high school, I joined band and I found a really great community of friends there, lifelong friends that I still connect with nowadays. But it wasn't quite enough to save me from the drowning that I was feeling. I started seeing a counselor in the teen health center. I started antidepressants, uh, but unfortunately, it still wasn't enough for me. So at some point, my high school counselor pulled me in, I think my junior year, and said, look, flat out, like, you are not going to graduate. Became really good friends with Truancy at that point. Like, Truancy was my best friend, in addition to my next best friend, which was my bed, which I could never get out of. And she said, you know what, it's just not going to happen for you. These are the options that you had. She laid it out on the table and she said, you can go to night school. Absolutely not. I'm not doing that. She said, "You can go to summer school." And I also said, "Absolutely no, I'm not doing that." Then she said, "You can go to vocational school, come out with a career, and you will make all the credits up in time in order for you to graduate." And I'm kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. I had maybe taken a running start class here or there previously, but with my extreme procrastination, which, as I recently have been diagnosed with ADHD and complex PTSD, a lot of that makes sense now. I just couldn't stay focused. So she came to me with this vocational school, you know, offer basically. And at that time, she said I could go to school for medical assisting, or I can go to school for um, dental assisting or cosmetology. At that point, I didn't really know. I picked medical assisting because I had been a caretaker for my parents for multiple health issues for some time. So I figured that might be the best route to go. So I ended up going to the Seattle Vocational Institute, which is unfortunately no longer. Um, but it basically acted like running start. So my high school paid for all of my credits at SVI for my medical assisting career. Um, and the thing that I really want to drive home here, sorry, Brenna, actually, can I ask you for a verbal warning? Thanks.
Yeah,
Uh,
no worries.
Thank you. The point I really want to drive home here for all of you all is that there are so many different paths in order to success. I think that there's a very specific way that society tells you you need to do in order to be a successful person. And I have found a lot of times those are sometimes white notions of success, AKA go to a high school, go to a 4-year college that will drain you of your money. Hope that you can get a job with that degree that drained you of all of your money. Um, and cross your fingers that everything works out well. And that just wasn't for me. And I think that there are a lot of people in the same situation as I am. And in high school, I think it's a great time to start thinking about what it is you want to do, particularly in the healthcare sector. Like, there are a lot of programs at North Seattle, South Seattle. They call them career training or professional and technical career training. And I would check to see if your high school participates in Running Start, if you can start taking credits at that point. This was never presented to me until I was at the point where I was failing. And I wish I had known about these options ahead of time so that way I could spend more of my energy into something that would help me graduate high school and also give me a career. Because at that point in time, I'm thinking about how am I going to put food on the table for my family? How am I going to help my parents pay their bills? That's what was on my mind at that point. And so I really wish that these options were laid out sooner and not told to me when it was a last ditch effort or even in senior year. Like, I think if I had known about these things in freshman year, I could have said, okay, I'm going to kind of build my 4 years and see how and where I want to end up. Once I got into MA school, the first semester was a bit of an adjustment, I will say. But after that, finding something I really liked and I knew I was going to get a career out of it was such a motivator for me. I got 4.0s for the first time in my life. And the fact that I got this career paid for is huge. I'm one of the few people that I know that has no student loans. Um, and I think that's a pretty big deal. Student loans are drowning people right now. So I am extremely proud of that. So for those of you who had joined a little bit later, I work at the UW Medical Center. I've been there for about 12 years. I worked as a medical assistant for about 5 years in the transplant clinic. And then I was approached for a program coordinator position, which ended up being non clinical, mostly desk work. And I really didn't think it was for me, but it ended up being one of the greatest choices I've ever made. It came with a huge raise. I've gotten a lot of great connections. I am co-chair of our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee for the UW-MC, and so I've been able to make a lot of great connections there, and I'm actually applying for a job within that office to see if I can work there permanently. And it's all about the connections that you make and working really hard. For that job that I'm applying for, it requires a bachelor's, which I do not have. But because I've made such great connections with that office and done really good work for them, they have fought HR basically to say, this person, we want this person to be able to apply. Um, so that is really mostly my story. I didn't expect for there to be 19 of you all. um, does anybody have any specific questions for me? You're welcome, Amani. Just make your own path, you all. Kids are smart. I think people underestimate high school kids. Like, you all are so smart and have so much more to offer. And like, don't let this society, this racist system that we live in, tear you down because you have so much to offer. And if your path is different than everyone else's, that's okay. And hold faith in that because not everybody's path is the same. And that doesn't mean that you're worth less or you're not enough. Keep on going. Thank you all in the chat. You're so nice. I was really nervous, I will say, as a 19-year-old fresh out of medical assisting, barely have graduated high school, very easily could have dropped out. I had friends that told me, like, we literally thought that you were going to drop out. Like, we can't believe that you're sitting here with no student loans and we thought you were going to drop off. And I'm like struggling to get a career. So I went to medical assisting school at the Seattle Vocational Institute, although that is no longer a functioning school at this point. But I do know North Seattle has a great medical assisting program. South Seattle also has a great medical assisting program. I think our now they just call them colleges, but our community colleges are incredible. I also think that people don't talk enough about our community colleges and really push you towards these 4-year schools, but you're going to get a great education at a community college. Is that where Seattle Central went? That's where SVI programs moved. Yep. You're going to get a great education at Seattle Central or North Seattle. Layla's asking, have you ever gave up? There were a lot of really tough moments for me along the way from like 8th grade to high school. I had a really hard time, particularly, again, as I said before, like not having a lot of support at home. Not that my parents didn't support me, but just they were not equipped to support me in the ways that I needed. So I had to dig really deep and be able to find ways to get things done. I didn't have parents who could help me with homework. I didn't have parents who could help me figure out my pathways in life. So there were a lot of really kind of dark moments there, and as much as it was terrible for my counselor to sit and say like, "Hey, you're really not gonna graduate," um, was very much the firm shake that I needed that probably a lot of parents do for them, and I just didn't have parents that did that for me. So, this very strange, twisty, windy road of how I ended up to where I am now, um, has worked for me in a really unfortunate way. It started out really, really rough, and I ended up in a really incredible place. I mean, the UW has a 401k. They have great benefits that I've been able to have for 12 years. How do you deal with obstacles? For me, I think it was finding the right outlets. I'm a big music nerd, so I listened to a lot of music and went to shows back in my high school days. And so finding something that brought me joy um, was the key for me because everything around me was so difficult that finding bits of joy, things that I could hold on to, um, were really helpful. And again, knowing that these classes I was taking once I got into my MA program were going to give me an actual career and that I know people are hiring, I know I'm going to make money. That was a big driving force for me because I needed money, as we all do. Anna's asking about running start. Any tips to go down the medical route? So yeah, I think thinking about what it is you want to do. A lot of people who want to be a nurse in the end up going to medical assisting classes, and a lot of those credits can transfer. So that's a great route to go is starting as a medical assistant and then flowing into nursing. A lot of people do that. If you need something even quicker, CNA, certified nursing assistant, that program is even shorter, and a lot of people are hiring. For that. So you can always start there and then hop into MA and then go RN. But basically, starting on any of those science credits are really the way to go. And it's great that you're doing it through Running Start. Like, make them pay, people. Make your school pay for you because you are the future and we need you. So take advantage of that as much as you can. Ever thought of dropping out of college? Once I was in my medical assisting program, I did not think of dropping out. The first, like I said, the first quarter was pretty rough transition, but once I got into something that was going to give me a career and something that I felt like really interested in, and it didn't have any of the like BS drama of high school, I felt so much better then. I knew I was going to excel if I put my mind to it and didn't get caught up in a lot of the other drama. And honestly, something as silly as this, but growing up poor, like not being able to buy clothes, not being able to have new things, not that was part of high school. That's part of high school, right? And as I moved into an MA program, it was like all scrubs. Nobody cared. Everybody was there because they knew that they wanted to get somewhere and get a career. So for me, that was also really helpful, I think, mentally. I work at Seattle Children's, always looking for MAs. Honestly, MAs are hugely, hugely in demand, and I will forever will be. I think about a lot of jobs that are like being put out by robots, but MAs are just never going to be one of those jobs. And a lot of the starting wages for MAs right now are like, I think they're up at upwards of 20 an hour, like really, really good. Like you could definitely make a living as an MA. And I believe the MA programs are usually anywhere from a year to two max. So it's not a huge time investment to come out with a lifetime of experience and money. The advantage of getting an associate's degree. Yeah, so getting an associate's degree, I believe, really helps you in terms of getting it, jump starting to other programs. Like a lot of times they suggest you getting an AA in something. So that gives you a core amount of credits that you can then transfer into other programs. I myself do not have an AA degree. I have a degree in medical, I'm a certified medical assistant and have a degree in medical assisting. But had I gone the nursing route, I believe a lot of those medical assisting transfers credits would transfer into nursing, which you need, I think, for allied sciences associate's degree. A lot of places now for nursing are actually requiring that you have a bachelor's. So the associate's degree, unfortunately, is getting sort of like lowered down in terms of importance, which is really hard. But they're all the building blocks for each other. Really, Like, I mean, I think my first job I got was at 16 or maybe 17. And then I was juggling working a job, trying to go to school, um, being a caretaker for my parents all in one. Um, so don't forget about like the support that you need for yourself and taking times to find breaks, taking times for self-care. I wish I had known more about self-care when I was in high school because I think that not doing that for myself really contributed to a lot of burnout and caregiving fatigue, which is absolutely a real thing. So balancing and trying to get in things that find you joy, that bring you joy is really important. And, you know, your mental well-being is really important. And if you're struggling, ask for help, truly. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope that I was able to give some insight to you all and really wishing you all the best of luck.